Federal law allows citizens to reproduce, distribute, or exhibit portions of copyrighted motion pictures, videotapes, or video discs under certain circumstances without authorization of the copyright holder. This infringement of copyright is called fair use, and is allowed for purposes of criticism, news, reporting, teaching, and parody. This means you. So, let's talk about one of the most hated characters of all time, Bubsy. Yeah, I don't really need to introduce him or even really talk about him much in depth. By now we all know about the horrid games, Claws Encounters of the Furred Kind, Bubsy 2, Fractured Furry Tales, and the ever-so-infamous Bubsy 3D. And we should know by now that Bubsy was given a television pilot that ultimately failed, and will hopefully never get rebooted to actually be a series. The curse of Bubsy has made this mascot Game Radar's worst mascot of the 90s. For those of you who have never played the games, I cannot help you. It's best you go elsewhere to find gameplay footage of, hands down, some of the worst video games you will ever see. For those of you who have never seen the plot, well, have no fear, today that is what we are covering. So the first thing I must mention is Bubsy is voiced by Rob Paulsen. And if you have no idea who he is, let's just say he's played some very memorable characters.
All right, we'll go through them. I'll say the names,
okay,
and then
I will tell you if I know them.
do the voice, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, I can do it.
All right, so we obviously Yakko from Animaniacs.
Yeah. Hello, nurse. I know. Hey, God, look, it's me, nurse.
Cowabunga! Shredder, you tin-faced geek! Get back here and taste cold turtle steel! Yeah, that's PJ. Oh my God. Look, Race, a pterodactyl.
Not in the face, not in the face!
I don't know, that's Dr. Scratchersnip from the Animaniacs. Yeah, he's a psychiatrist. Yeah.
That's Major Glory from Dexter's Lab, an anatomically correct superhero costume.
Oh my God, Bubsy the Bobcat! The best thing about that show is that the check's cleared.
Another thing I have to mention is this show will not take a breather. Literally every second has something in the noise department, whether it be music, sound effects, or characters. All of which I'll cover in this review when needed. But just know that they can't and won't shut up for a minute. They really should have used a breather. I may talk straight for most of my reviews, but I spare your ears every once in a while, and not to mention I don't do full 23-minute reviews. Count your blessings. So enough stalling, let's drive into this shitstorm. So we start with Bubsy waking up his friend Arnie Armadillo, played by Pratt Faley, voice of Marshall Bravestar, Wildcat from Tailspin, and Krang from the Ninja Turtles. And Arnie basically gives us a general reaction as to how the audience feels about Bubsy.
Bubsy! Oh, worse than a truck!
I'm just gonna say this now, pointing out your issues will not make them go away. Anyway, the doorbell rings, and Arnie hides under the couch from Bubsy's nephew and niece, which Bubsy reveals his location to the two, making the beginning of the scene immediately pointless. And Arnie had an appropriate reaction to the twins, as they are as annoying as Bubsy, if not more. Meanwhile, while the twins fight over who Arnie is going to be forced to play with first, Bubsy turns on the TV to the news, talking about how there were over 10,000 armadillos ran over by trucks.
Here, over 10,000 armadillos were run over by trucks in the state of Texas alone. For many of the poor little fellows, this is the last sound they will ever hear.
Why the fuck would you put that on the news? If there really were that many armadillos killed by trucks, wouldn't you be triggering some families of the armadillos killed? It's like having your child hang themselves on Christmas lights to commit suicide. From there on out, Christmas lights would trigger memories of the child's death and emotions of sadness, you fucking insensitive morons. Understandably enough, this freaks Arnie out as he curls into a ball. The twins see this and decides Arnie wants to play ball. After watching him having a fucking panic attack, Bubsy just lets them play ball with his best friend. The news goes on to talk about an invention created by Virtual Reality. His invention is supposed to allow wearers' thoughts to become reality. It's a cool concept, really nice setup to the story. But unfortunately they chose the wrong show to do it in. Anyway, Virgil is looking for someone crazy enough to be the guinea pig, which Bubsy happily volunteers for, calling himself totally nuts. Which is honestly something not to be proud of. Then he tells Arnie about it, using stock footage that's totally out of place, and then heads out by saying his annoying catchphrase.
What could possibly go wrong? 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 What could possibly go wrong?
We then cut to our villain, Ali Cassandra, played by Betty Jean Ward, voices of Scarlet from G.I. Joe and Velma in most of the Scooby-Doo movies. She calls in her minions Boswell Buzzard and Sid Shrew, voiced by Neil Ross and Jim Cummings? You mean to tell me one of the most used and most beloved voice actors of all time played Sid Shrew? As if Rob Paulsen wasn't enough, Cummings is certainly a shock, as he's definitely the biggest name in this cast and plays a character we only know of because of a joke later in the episode. For as much noise as this show contains some, it's very hard to understand. She angrily talks to her minions and they suck up until Cassandra does the worst thing you can do in a show like this. She uses her fingernails on the By the way, she does this twice, because it was such a wonderful sound that we had to hear it again. But we'll get to that scene when we get there. Anyway, she wants Sid and Boswell to take the helmet from Virgil. To, I guess, rule the world? I don't fucking know. It's also a running gag that Sid just wants to eat. But I guess he's not allowed unless Boswell cooks it. They never fully explain why he can't eat, though. Cut to Bubsy arriving at the lab to test out the helmet, and Virgil warns him to be very specific with his thoughts, and Bubsy ignores him wanting to fly, thus putting them up in the air and spouts.
What could possibly go wrong? 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 What could possibly go wrong?
Virgil takes the helmet off Bubsy and on to Arnie, and Bubsy tells him not to think of the truck, which causes Arnie to think of the truck. But Bubsy comes to the rescue and immediately gets them out of the situation, making the scene totally pointless. However, Arnie doesn't teleport back to the lab with everyone because consistency of how your world works isn't needed whatsoever. Virgil tells Bubsy that he's a moron, and Bubsy snaps his suspenders like a dick before the twins ask to use the helmet. Bubsy explains how it's not a toy despite what just happened, and after he tells the twins this, he tries placing it on a nearby chair that one of the twins moves in and replaces, causing them to get the helmet. And we're not even halfway through the episode. We then see Boswell and Sid flying up on the twins, and Sid is going crazy because he's hungry. Hey, at least they bothered to explain why he's hungry. The twins are fighting over who gets to use the helmet while Boswell is unintentionally hurting Sid because even the creators hate this shit. And Sid crashes into a cake only to finally get a bit of food before being exploded by a candle. First up, Mr. Writer, I'm glad you moved on from Bubsy to do episodes of Shaolin Showdown and wrote Bah Humduck. So it's good to know you know how to write. However, you have written for Coconut Fred, Tough Puppy, and even some of the worst episodes of Fairly Odd Parents. Hell, you're the reason behind Sparky. Really fucking appreciate that choice, asshole. But I feel the need to tell you a very vital detail about what you did in Bubsy. You introduce a problem, only to have it resolve immediately. Some may call that bad writing. I just call it bored writer syndrome, which is very fitting, seeing as some of the other things you have written. So Boswell and Sid try to get the helmet off the twins, but the twins decide to summon up a roller coaster. Cut back to Bubsy and the gang looking for the helmet when they find themselves on a roller coaster, which Arnie gets ran over by. Bubsy then wants to save the day using stock footage, again, before getting hit by the roller coaster. We then see a very surreal scene where the roller coaster goes through the Doctor Who intro before Bubsy tells them to stop the coaster. They do, but then they turn into giants and squish Bubsy before turning back to normal. Bubsy decides to be a good parent and scolds his nephew and niece, saying that they could have seriously destroyed the world, and then they make the excuse that it's their birthday.
But it's our birthday!
Just everything is just like, it's my birthday. I can knock down a sign if I want to.
Genocide, birthday.
I can
Boswell and Sid try to get the helmet again, and Bubsy trades a corn dog for the helmet, thinking Sid's stomach is bigger than his brain. The Buzzard and Shrew blow up, and that's where the episode should end. However, we still have 7 minutes left in the episode, so Bubsy says his catchphrase, and the helmet gets taken by Boswell and Sid, who take it back to Cassandra, who wishes for some lame vanity stuff. Cut back to Bubsy, who's upset about losing the twins and the helmet. One of which I'm sure is actually important and isn't a total annoyance to the audience. I'm just trying to figure out which is which. And Virgil reminds them to the world that could be, and probably is, in danger. Though, seeing Cassandra's wishes, I wouldn't worry too much. Anyway, Bubsy kicks himself, or rather beats himself over the head with the psychotic Arnie, before putting Arnie into electricity. He then calls up the shrew and asks their location, of which the shrew brainlessly gives away. You know, there is such a thing as making a character too stupid. Patrick in The Splinter is a good example of this, though unlike Patrick in The Splinter, Sid the Shrew's stupidity is actually used for plot relevance. The worst part about it is, it seems to be Sid's only character trait. And Bubsy explains this whenever he talks to them, explaining to the audience that, hey, Sid has a small brain, and constantly goes out of his way to insult him. Boswell scolds Sid for having given away their address, though I have no idea how he knew that Sid did, unless it's a random assumption. Cassandra calls Tweedledee and Tweedledum into the room and explain how the helmet is making her hair frizzy, and Boswell explains that Bubsy is coming over. And Cassandra gives the easy answer just to not open the door. What could possibly go wrong? Well, Sid answers the door like a single-trait idiot he is, of course, and Bubsy comes in demanding the helmet back, so Cassandra scratches her nails on the chalkboard again, which bothers everyone but Oblivia, voiced by Tress MacNeille, who you may know as Daisy Duck in a lot of the later Disney-related things like Kingdom Hearts and Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, Dot Warner from Animaniacs, and Lucy in Weird Al Yankovic's song Ricky. I've been ignoring Oblivia up to this point because she really has had nothing to do with anything. She occasionally spoke only to get Bubsy's name wrong, but that's really it. However, Oblivia hits Cassandra with a chalkboard, causing her to drop the helmet. They then fight over it, and we get gags of what happens in the hands of the different characters. When it finally reaches Bubsy, however, we learn that the thing has been overloaded and will explode, so Bubsy imagines something and the helmet explodes. Cut to his funeral, then the credits. If only. No, Bubsy saves the day. Oblivia gets his name right, and then he tells Arnie to live life like it was your last, using stock footage once again. And then they end on electrocution. Cut to credits. Bubsy is a mess, and that should just be apparent. Any idea that they had in this pilot was quickly forgotten with the exception of Sid's hunger and the virtual reality helmet. There were several plots that could have gone places that the writer decided to do nothing with. It's like he knew the pilot would have never been passed, so he tried to write as many stories as he could to try to cram it all into one spot. Ray De Laurentiis has always written episodes that forgot about crucial plot points. In the episode of Bubsy, we had the twins' birthday that was forgotten about until the last second. We also had the strange love interest Oblivia that wasn't at all mentioned or hinted at until about the last second as well. And let's not forget about Arnie's truck phobia that could have worked for the episode's favor if it wasn't for the fact that they only used it once for Deus Ex Machina and once for the purpose of having no purpose. And that's just covering the plot. The characters are all as pointless and one-dimensional as the characters in Pig, Goat, Banana Cricket, basically playing as one-note characters with the exception of Bubsy himself. Arnie and Sid are used as punching bags of the show, with Arnie being very timid and cautious and Sid being one-dimensionally stupid. The twins are written as annoying as the Cutie Mark Crusaders were in One Bad Apple, but less believable in the way they act. Virgil and Boswell are characters with little to no personality whatsoever, and Cassandra is a vanity whore who, if you were to actually call a legitimate villain, I'd laugh in your face. To call Cassandra a villain is to call me scary. It can't happen, but I'd wonder what was wrong with you to think this. And Bubsy himself is an insensitive dick, electrocuting Arnie, reminding him of his fears, straight up calling Sid stupid with every line of dialogue he has towards him, and just overall decides to be as unlikable as possible. And that's not at all mentioning how little he listens. Look, I understand, he's supposed to be crazy, but there's a fine line between crazy and immorally stupid, and Bubsy crosses that line on many occasions. The sound in this show is entirely too constant. When a character is talking, there will always be background noise to distract from what they are saying. Take the conversation between Boswell and Cassandra, as Boswell explains that Bubsy is coming over to take the helmet.
Oh, Allie, darling, I know how important your hair is to you, but I fear I have some even more troublesome news.
Having Sid slurping noises throughout this conversation makes Boswell almost impossible to understand, as it's very distracting. Not to mention, throughout every scene there's always background music, as if it was some kind of video game. Which, I understand, Bubsy started as a video game, but when transferring an idea from one medium to the next, you can calm down on the music. We don't always need to be listening to something. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if this show caused sensory overload. The sounds during every single second can be overwhelming at times, and it can really take a lot out of a person. I know it certainly did with me, and I don't even suffer from sensory overload, to my knowledge. Bottom line, I'm glad this show never got greenlit, I'm glad it is mostly forgotten, and I'm glad this review is over. Maybe I can actually work on some reviews from my vault. See you soon. If you would like to get caught up on future reviews, there's a link in the description below to a Facebook page. Basically, all that I'm going to tell you. I mean, you can follow it, you can get all the updates to future reviews if you care. If not, I'm not going to force you to do it. It's all up to you.